All right. Well, I just want to tell everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for this fabulous webinar on financial reporting and analysis for industrial manufacturers. You guys are in for a treat. Your panel today brings over 75 years of knowledge and experience in the world of finance. We've got just a couple of housekeeping things to go over. Just letting you know, all attendees are muted, but you can pop questions into the Q&A at any time. The webinar is being recorded. You will get a link to the recording after the webinar is over. And those of you that are attending that need to earn a CPE credit, you can earn one for participating in today's session. You must answer all the poll questions and complete the post-event survey to be eligible for that CPE credit. Questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. Please enter your questions into the Q&A window, and we will take care of them at the end. All right, so today's speakers, we've got Mr. Ron Klontz, the EVP of Business Strategy for Godlan. Mr. Klontz has been working in the field with SyteLine for over 35 years and has lots of finance experience in his background. Mr. John Sabick is a CPA and has been with Prophix for over 10 years and has over 20 years of experience in the industry. And then Mr. Trethaway is the director of FP&A with Percentimac, and he has also about 25 years of experience in the finance industry. All right, over to you, Mr. Klontz.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie, so much. For those that may not know Godlan, this may be your first introduction. We're a long-time accredited CloudSuite Industrial SyteLine partner. Got a very large staff across the U.S., and we have a lot of different expertise in a number of different areas, and you can see that by the solutions. The main thing to take away here is that we've got a long track record of helping CloudSuite Industrial customers become successful, implement advanced technologies, and we're very excited today to introduce on this webinar one of the newest additions within the CloudSuite Industrial world is Prophix.
Perfect. Thanks, Ron. Just a little bit about Prophix before we go ahead and jump into things. Here's really the bird's eye view. Prophix as an organization has been around for a very long time. We were actually established in 1987. We're headquartered here out of Toronto, Canada. We do have offices globally. And in addition to that, we have an exclusive partner network that we work with as well. Godlan being one of our long trusted partners. And that's actually helped us amass over 3,500 customers in over 100 different countries. The one thing that I would say that really sets Prophix apart pertains to our integration capability. So we can actually integrate into any source systems, any of the Infor products, CloudSuite Industrial, for example, in order to go ahead and automate the import of that data into a central location. Another thing that I would say really sets Prophix apart from other solutions out there really pertains to our customer experience. We really like to take the white glove approach throughout the entire evaluation cycle. We carry that through the demonstration. And then if you actually end up going with Prophix, we carry that throughout the implementation as well. And we're always here to support you. From an analyst standpoint, we're highly regarded as the top solution in the mid-market. At the bottom of this slide, you'll notice a couple of different badges and logos. Those are really the different partners or analysts that we work with that provide their updates on the product and its capabilities. So BPM partners, G2 Crowd, Trust Radius, Gartner, Dresner are all really the top analysts. And then from an ease of use standpoint, once we actually dive into the demonstration components of today's webinar, you're going to really see that Prophix is a solution that has been designed by finance for finance. So everything that you would do from a navigation standpoint is all done via point, click, drag, drop, or using easy to navigate drop-down screens and menus. All right, here's the menu that's going to really take us into the next 45 minutes or so. We're going to start off, Ron's going to kick it off by talking a little bit about the challenges that are facing finance teams today. We're going to talk about CloudSuite Industrial and Prophix, really two solutions that are best in class. So we're going to talk about how a ERP system should coexist with a CPM tool such as Prophix. Then we'll dive into exploring the benefits of an FP&A solution. We'll touch upon dashboarding and reporting. We'll talk about planning and forecasting, along with consolidations. And Brian Trethaway One of our guest panelists today is actually going to talk about some of his experiences and the common use cases, how he's leveraging Prophix to mitigate some of the challenges he was having previously prior to bringing on Prophix. And lastly, there is a Q&A session. So go ahead and enter your questions into the chat box, and we'll go ahead and address those at the end of today's session.
Excellent. Thanks, John. So what I thought we'd do is we'd talk a little bit about the current state. Being a former finance professional myself, I have seen this evolution, if you will, occur in the Office of Finance. It really started to where when we start to really look at how this kind of had its journey. I remember when I was a county manager, controller of a company, working within SyteLine at the time. The best I could get was transactional visibility. That transactional visibility was I had to go run reports and I had to go do the kind of like inspectoring. I had to go and do the investigation to find out where the crime was committed. So really working in what I would say traditionally in kind of a hindsight mindset, kind of what has happened. And it's very difficult to kind of move and to shake. And then we've seen this evolution to where now tools and capabilities are providing way more insight to finance professionals and teams. This has come around with a lot of applications that are around analyzing data, looking at, CloudSuite Industrial now with the application of Burst into analytics space and like, right? So all these are great evolutions, but the challenge is for a finance team is a lot of these tools, they really don't speak the language of finance, right? They don't understand debits and credits when we're talking about transactional things of nature and the difference between a balance sheet and an income statement. Well, that's where having tools like Prophix that do understand that, but also can start to give you the insights into the business and then really moving into this next level, which is really around what I would call the foresight. And this is where we really start to take things to that next level. This foresight gives teams more time because we automate financial processes. We do things around trying to take the mundane analysis and reporting, put that on automatic. And now guess what? The finance teams start to spend more time looking at variance reports and looking at trend analysis and to try to really see how things are moving in the business, and even spending time in those wonderful things like budgeting and planning that none of us ever wanted to do because it was all in Excel, right? So this is the evolution that's occurring, and it's through this evolution that we're going to talk about today is really some key capabilities within Prophix combined with CloudSuite Industrial to bring all this together. Now, we understand that working within CloudSuite Industrial, it is a great manufacturing application. And so you look at all the key areas, finance is really kind of the key to provide some directional oversight, information, analytics and things to a lot of key areas of a manufacturing organization. And I know, for example, I remember we had to do a lot of, cost visibility and cost control, keeping an ever mind on profitability, right? So as you start to look at these key elements that we want to try to help you automate and to kind of remove what I would call some uncertainty in key areas, because let's face it, if there's one thing that's certain is the uncertainty around the last 4 or 5 years of business and the speed of change that is really pressed upon all organizations. And this comes from customer pressure, it comes from vendor pressure, rate changes, cost increases all throughout the business. And sometimes it's hard to realize and understand where these unexpected or, things are occurring. And this is really what Prophix and CloudSuite Industrial are great at, is really trying to get the cost control elements become of paramount importance, leveraging these technologies for better profitability, doing things that have, impacts on budget management and finance performance. We'll talk about that in a little more detail about how that contrasts with some things that CloudSuite Industrial does natively. And a big thing is trying to be able to give a finance team solutions that are not just a point solution, maybe like Excel. Excel is great, that is terrific, but sometimes that can also be a little bit of a detriment as you look to build out these business models and try to change scenarios and to get a team involved. Ultimately, with the business outcomes and the business drivers. So that's what we're going to unpack today. So I think we're up to a polling question.
I think the polling question should be popping out any second here. Stephanie,
Yep.
if you could go ahead and there we go. Just go ahead. We'll focus on the very first question, and then we'll go ahead and address the other ones throughout the rest of the webinar here. All right, maybe just another 5 seconds. Stephanie, are you able to go ahead and publish the results of that poll? If not, we could take a look at it after.
I say I am trying to.
Was just really interested to see what the 1 and 2 items. Oh, there we go. Consolidations, cumbersome financial consolidations. Yeah, that is something that we will be touching upon today within the latter part of the demonstration. We will actually walk you through how you can do full consolidations directly within the Prophix tool.
And that is something, this is Brian, that's something that I use Prophix for, and we depend on it, is the consolidation of our businesses and our intercompany LMs. So that'll be nice to get to.
Excellent. Thanks, Brian. So team, just a real quick, slide here just on, we want to make sure that, we really do get your issues. These are things that over the last 35 years, I've been working with CloudSuite Industrial and the like. These pain points have been resonated by numbers of customers and prospects, right? So I won't read all of these out, but it's really containing the data. Where is the single source of truth? Tons of manual processes. So let's take that little example around consolidation, right? There's a ton of activities that go into that. So, the manual processes around budgeting, around consolidations and the like, and all this really lies in taking hours and hours from the finance teams. And then there's the whole, how do we collaborate better, especially during the budgeting processes, and ultimately being able to serve up information to make much better and quicker decisions at the executive level, at the mid-management level, the organizational level, right? That's really where teams are really relying on the talent, the expertise, and just the unbelievable abilities that usually always lie within those finance teams.
Yeah, the following 2 slides here really paint the picture what a lot of you on this call today are probably experiencing. Ron had mentioned Excel is a great tool. However, it does have its limitations. For a lot of organizations, what starts out as a pretty simple process whereby you're pulling in data from maybe a couple source systems, including your ERP, your payroll system, maybe your CRM system, and maybe you have a couple key stakeholders that are involved with, say, your annual budget process or your month-end close, tends to grow over time, right? And once again, what was once manageable tends to break down due to the fact that additional data systems are added, which means you're extracting more data sets, you're dropping that information into Excel, and usually additional stakeholders or contributors are added to that process. Some of the customers that we chat with have these massive Excel files, and all they do is grow every week, every month. And the reason being is that they're continuously extracting data sets. They're treating it more as it's a database rather than a report writer. And that's really where Prophix comes into play to help alleviate some of that pain. Prophix as a product is a platform really geared towards driving efficiencies within the office of the CFO. And from a user standpoint, it's pretty common to have anybody within the finance and accounting department be a user within Prophix. That's basically from your analysts all the way up to your CFO. The tool is very, very intuitive. So what ends up happening in a lot of cases is that organizations will actually go ahead and roll it out to different departments within the organization. Once again, everything that they would do is point, click, drag, drop, no code. And that really speaks to the reason why Prophix has such quick and high user adoption. And this is just a couple of the key areas, once again, that we help streamline and automate. On the accounting side, we have our close and process management, financial consolidations, account reconciliations, intercompany management, cash management, disclosure management. And then native to the product for the longest time was the FP&A component. So leveraging Prophix for all your reporting, dashboarding, planning, and forecasting requirements.
Just from a quick technology perspective, so if your teams ask, oh, well, how is this really all going to work within our CloudSuite Industrial environment? Well, it plugs and plays very well. So data fabric, or the data lake that the application in CloudSuite Industrial is working with, Prophix connects right within that layer. So all that wonderful data that's getting published from CloudSuite Industrial, if you're in the cloud, that all gets pulled directly from the data lake. And there again is what John said earlier about the multiple data sources. So if you're in an on-prem situation, then we would connect to your local instance of your on-prem, whether that would be a single database or multi-database and multi-site, depending on your deployment. And even connecting in like things like your CRM solution, maybe your HR solution or your payroll solutions, so that you get a holistic view of really all those elements that are going to impact maybe reporting, financial reporting, budgeting, planning, etc.
Here's another polling question. Polling question number 2. Stephanie, if you could go ahead and pull up the poll questions again, that'd be great. All right, the question is, how do I leverage CloudSuite Industrial for reporting? We'll go ahead and give it a couple seconds here. All right, Stephanie, can you go ahead and publish the results? Oh, there we go. An even split between using third-party tools like Excel, and we also have some people that are familiar with corporate performance management or FPM solutions. Great. So Ron, here we go. Tee up the first topic of discussion on the reporting and dashboarding functionality, and then we'll go into the demo piece.
So let's talk about this first area, and this is just really around financial reporting. So for those that have been around CloudSuite Industrial for a little while, they understand that, you know, there were native reports back in maybe, you know, SyteLine 8 and before, and then they brought in the Excel add-in. Well, the Excel add-in gives you the ability to come in, have various templates, and then you create your financial statements and multi-site and currency and the like, and that's been a standard capability. Within the last couple of months, they added that native financial statement report writer back into CloudSuite Industrial, the cloud version. And so that's probably what you see a little thing on there, to where you can kind of come in and run your statements, produce those to Excel, produce those to PDF. Now, what we want to really contrast today is to see that there's some other capabilities that Prophix is going to provide around a lot of metrics and tracking EBITDA. You know, looking at how financial statement reporting, a statement that doesn't come out of the box, you kind of have to build with CloudSuite Industrial, is a statement of cash flows. So that could be an area that an opportunity. And then just some ad hoc analysis that's really geared for very quick, being able to slice and dice the business in a number of ways, either from a financial or from a data coming from CloudSuite Industrial. And then if your financial reporting requires any kind of external reporting to a bank, to a board, being able to have like board packages, so we automate that reporting process. So John's going to take us through, and we're going to show some examples. And then Brian's going to talk about maybe some of their experience of how they actually did this within their organization.
Perfect. Ron, can you let me know if you've seen your screen change and it's actually showing?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. So real quick, you guys are probably already well aware that Prophix is a web-based tool. So in terms of gaining access, you could utilize any of your favorite web browsers. So Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Safari, all pretty common ones. We do support single sign-on, which allows you to, your users to pass through their login credentials. And one thing that's really neat is that we're device agnostic as well. Meaning you can actually go ahead and pull up Prophix on your smartphone, your laptop, your tablet. As long as you have an internet connection, you can actually gain access into the tool. So Ron said it best. If you're looking for robust reporting functionality and dashboarding, this is really where Prophix comes into play. As you can see, here's an example of a dashboard that I've put together where we could track revenue related information. If there's specific KPIs and metrics that you want to keep a close eye on, for example, gross margin, working cap, inventory turn, if you have a large capital budget and you want to track what your actual to budget spend is, you can go ahead and create all these different badges and visuals that help you to easily identify specific areas that you're responsible for within your organization. Once again, you may want to break down your costs or your revenue by regions or by customers, by product lines. We have geo maps as well. If you're, multinational or you have business all across different locations, you can actually use these as a nice way to track that between the different geos. But in addition to that, everything within the dashboards is fully interactive. So for example, as a user, if you're taking a look at your operating expenses, what people love about visuals, it allows them to highlight anomalies rather quickly. So in this case, we can see we have some pressure coming from our operations department. I can easily click anywhere on this chart. And what Prophix is going to go ahead and do, it's actually going to drill down into your hierarchy. To provide a little context, what we would do, we would take a look at the hierarchies that you have set up within CloudSuite, and that becomes the foundation of how we would go ahead and set them up within Prophix to provide this inherent capability to drill down into your data. Okay, so in this case, we can see majority of the pressure is coming from our engineering department. What's really neat, we could take things one step further, select the little link, and Prophix will go ahead and pull up any type of report that's linked to that visual. Really what we're trying to do at the end of the day is provide end users that self-servability where they can log in, they can actually drill up, they could play around with their data, they can answer their own questions as required. In terms of look and feel of the reports, this is totally up to your organization. You can include charts, graphs, logos, the colors, the fonts. That is totally configurable to the ones that you would prefer. Reports can include a section for commentary. The biggest benefit from the reporting within Prophix is the fact that it's dynamic. So when you go ahead and create your core reports, you do so one time, and then they can be leveraged across the entire organization. So I have this drop down here on the left-hand side. I could toggle between a different department. I could come in, select another month. And as I go ahead and make that selection, Prophix will render the data that's associated with it. Okay. Keep in mind, we integrate directly into your source systems. We would schedule the cadence of that refresh. And by doing so, it's automatically updating all the data within your model. So all the data that's surfaced within reports or dashboards is the most relevant information. And it really speaks to that idea of that single source of truth as well that Ron had mentioned earlier. So anybody that's logging in, you can rest assured that they're all looking at the exact same data. A couple things to highlight here as well is that any report that you produce within Prophix can be exported out of the tool. To do so, it's extremely easy and intuitive. A user would simply go to the file dropdown. They could select all the reports. They could select the current page. They could remove pages with no data. Or if they want to cherry pick them, they could come in, select the ones that they want to go ahead and export. This is really good if you have somebody within the organization that's not set up as a user within Prophix. However, the benefit of setting up users within Prophix is that Prophix will go ahead and apply their respective security permissions. Okay, so it'll actually determine whether they have the read, write, or deny capability. Also on the topic of security, this is really where Prophix sets itself apart from other solutions, is that security blankets the entire product, which means you could go ahead and create standardized dashboards. You could create standardized reports. You could roll them out to all your users, all your stakeholders, and they will only be able to see the information based on their security permissions. Once again, saving the accounting and finance team a lot of time in the sense that they're not having to spend time formatting a separate tab, separate workbook for each and every cost center owner, budget owner, or stakeholder within the organization. A couple other things real quick. As mentioned, look and feel is totally up to you. Conditional formatting, I personally love. It allows you to highlight exceptions rather quickly. What's really neat, if we want to further analyze what's driving this variance of $13,000, or $12,791, we can easily right click and Prophix will go ahead and bring us into what we call ad hoc analysis. I'm gonna make this a bit bigger for everybody. The best way to describe ad hoc, and I see Brian nodding his head here, this is probably the one functionality that he uses more than anything else within the tool, especially when it comes to analyzing data. So ad hoc, the way I like to describe it is that it's similar to that of a pivot table, but best part, you don't have to worry about extracting data sets out of CloudSuite or out of any other source system. You won't have to worry about dropping it into an Excel file, overlaying a pivot table on top of that. No need to worry about VLOOKUPs, HLOOKUPs. In our example, if we want to drill down and to take a look at what's driving our travel variance, you'd simply hit the little plus icon. And once again, this is going to go ahead and drill down into your account hierarchy. So majority of the variance is coming from lodging. Let's say our next question might be, what department's responsible? What cost center is driving this? What's pretty powerful is we can actually come over here to the left-hand side, grab any of these dimensions, drop it into the canvas, and Prophix will swap the two out. Right. So for those that are on the phone that have, multi-entity structure, once again, you could come in, you could drop that into the view, and Prophix will go ahead and pivot on that. Keep in mind, I'm using a dummy data set here, so I don't have data everywhere. But as you can see, in terms of ease of use, it's all done via drag drop, and then you could utilize the members within the drop downs to filter. Maybe you want to take a look at your monthly actuals. You could drop that into the canvas, and Prophix will swap the two out. So absolutely no need to worry about extracting data sets, dropping them into pivot tables. If you ever want to toggle back to a previous view, you could always hit the little back arrow. And then really the beauty is that once you've identified where your variance is coming from, you could always go ahead and drill across to the underlying transactions that make up that balance. So in this case, we pulled in the account, the department, the month, the value, GL code. If there's any type of images that are stored, if you have a third-party image system or anything like that, and the system's able to go ahead and generate the URL link, we can actually include that as a hyperlink to allow you to get down to that level of detail without ever leaving Prophix. So once again, really what we're trying to do is, make users self-enabled, where we provide them, or finance can provide them, and accounting can provide them with this structured approach to being able to analyze their own data, rather than having to go ahead and reach out to you every time you have a question.
And on top of what John is saying and showing here, just so everybody knows, I have 8 sites in 2 countries on 5 different ERP systems. And I use Prophix to check the data we load on a daily basis. I have automated reports that go out to show what's building in the accounts for the open month. I provide banking reports, operational reports, board of director reports, trial balance reports. During month end, we create variance reports. I can even compare forecasts to prior forecasts to actuals to budget. And all of these reports were built in Prophix, and a lot of them are automated in their distribution or within a workflow. And it's a rare day that I'm not in ad hoc trying to answer a question for somebody. So the flexibility of the reporting is extremely high. If you can think of it and you have the data, you can build it. I also have operational style reports for like bookings, billings, and backlog, and commercial forecasting. So we have above and beyond finance that we report on as well.
Yeah, and that's really the beauty about Prophix, is that we can actually pull in statistical or operational data. It's not just financial information that resides within the GL. As long as the data resides somewhere, and this could be, information within your payroll system, your CRM system, an inventory management system. We have the ability to grab that, bring it into Prophix, and really have it in one central location. Just to paint the picture here in terms of, reporting. As Brian mentioned, he leverages it to produce his financial statements. Here's just one report, one example. I came up with this report. I called it the integrated financial statements. And it's really just a nice snapshot of your balance sheet, your cash flow, your P&L, all within one nice clean view. You'll notice we can roll up our net income into our cash flow statement, then report on balance sheet items to model out cash from operations, investments, financing, and essentially come up with our end of period cash balance. What's nice, some people like the summary. If they ever want the detailed report, they could right click, select the link template, and the detailed report sits right behind that particular summary. So here's the cash flow report. Once again, really from a creation standpoint, the best part is that you would go ahead and set up the report one time, and then it can be leveraged across all of your different entities if you have that multi-entity structure, along with, if you have different currencies, such as reporting and operating, that could all be taken into consideration as well. Once again, if you want to take a look at your balance sheet, Right click, select link template, and here's your detailed balance sheet. Very same concept. Once again, you got your drop downs. This would be your entity structure. And then in addition to that, what's nice is that you're not limited just to reporting on actuals, but if you want to do some planning or forecasting on the balance sheet side of things, if I scroll down to the bottom, you can actually play around with various types of drivers such as DSO, DPO, inventory turns, and update those drivers and model out different assumptions on your balance sheet, and then store it as a different version.
Now, John touched on something that I'd like to highlight real quick. The maintenance of these reports once they're built is minimal. Once you build a good report, the system automatically updates the headers of those reports for each new month as you roll forward. And once they're set up correctly and people buy off on them, the maintenance of the reports are very, very low.
Yeah, that's a great point. We often refer to it as the set it and forget it approach because
Very
we even
true.
have the ability. We know that it's not uncommon for accounts to be added within your source systems. The nice part is that the reporting is dynamic and it can actually pick it up and include it within that specific report.
Yeah.
To Brian's point, you mentioned board reports, month-end results deck, flash reports. Within Prophix, you can actually go ahead and select different reports that you produce within the application itself to include as a part of an overall package. Personally, what I like is that you're not limited just to Prophix content, but you might have documents that are in Word, PowerPoint, PDF that you may want to include. You can actually go ahead and select them, bring them in. And then to the right of that is your distribution list. So this is where you could come in, you could add individuals, you could add groups, and they would automatically become part of this distribution list. The best part is that you can schedule it. So if this is a weekly flash report or month-end results deck, let's say you guys close the books on workday 3, 4, 5, whatever it be, this could be the very first thing that's sitting in everybody's inbox at 8 a.m. the following day.
And we use these reports, John, that are automated to get the approval of the SyteLine CFOs. So they get those immediate reports via workflow, and they have to approve that it's a good representation of their ERP before
Perfect.
the final deck is sent out.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's we can talk a little bit about the workflow functionality, but it's great from a collaboration and accountability standpoint, where you could go ahead, send out those reports prior to closing the books. They could do a quick scan to see, how they're tracking. If the variances look like they're normal, then fine. If there's something that's out of whack, they could go in and analyze that before you guys go ahead and close everything off. So another polling question here. Stephanie, if you could go ahead and pop up the next one, that'd be great. So question 3, how do you leverage CloudSuite Industrial for planning? And we'll give it another minute. I should say a couple
Some of the
seconds.
companies we've acquired, it was the third one. So
Not at all.
not at all. First time I talked about a budget, they were like, huh?
I mean, that's not uncommon for small organizations. What seems to be a trend nowadays is a lot of companies are being purchased by bigger organizations or PE companies that are grouping them all together, in which case reporting and planning becomes super, super important. Stephanie, are you able to go ahead and pop up the results? Okay, looks like majority of the people on today's call, or actually everybody, is planning in Excel. Perfect. Ron, go ahead and tee this one up.
Yeah. So CloudSuite Industrial, when we look at budgeting and forecasting, really from a financial perspective, obviously we know there's advanced forecasting for products and materials and different types. That's not the forecasting I'm really talking about. This is around utilizing the core capabilities in CloudSuite. And really you have what's called a budget number and a plan number. A lot of customers will take and they'll copy in, last year's actuals or last year's in, and then that becomes a plan, and then they change, but really there's only 2 versions there. And you utilize that with the financial statement report writer. There is capability in that Excel report writer to do some budgets and to kind of lay it out and then push that back into CloudSuite Industrial, but usually it's like a percentage uplift, very basic. The drivers would have to be created with calculations in Excel. So that's where Prophix, you've probably already got a glimpse, really kind of takes this to another level. to give companies really what I would consider much more robust capabilities and the ability to react as the business continues to change through the year. I know, like us, we set a business plan out, but I can guarantee you 2 months in, assumptions have already changed around those numbers.
Mhm.
And nobody wants to go back through. If they've got Excel, they want to go back through and have to redo all that, right? Nobody does. So John's going to show you how we do that very differently in Prophix.
Sounds good. So let me close out on my last screen. Ron, once again, if you could let me know if you could see
Yes.
my dashboard.
You're good?
You're good, John.
Perfect. So before we actually go ahead and open up an example of a template, I do want to introduce the idea of workflow functionality. So what's nice about the workflow is that you can drive collaboration and accountability. So rather than having to go ahead and create templates in Excel, attach them to email, fire them off to your budget owners, Prophix can actually take care of all of that. When we log in, or when I logged in this case, you'll notice a section called My Tasks over here on the left-hand side. This is where I could come in and take a look at anything that I'm responsible for completing. So as a user, depending upon what your role is within the organization, you may have one task. For demo purposes, I've assigned them all to myself in this case. What's really neat is I could actually click on the three dots, launch this rocket ship, and I could easily take a look at what I currently have on the go. Anything that I miss will show up within the overdue section. And as I go ahead and complete items, will actually show up within the completed area. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at an example of an OPEX planning task. When it comes to expense planning, we see this done a number of different ways. Some organizations are planning by department, some by cost center, some by region, some by office, some by territory. But usually the template will look something similar to what I have here, where you would have your accounts within the rows, and then your months, if you're planning down to the monthly level, within the columns. We have customers that plan quarterly, some plan semi-annually, some just plan at the annual level. I stress the look and feel is totally up to your organization. You can see as I scroll over here to the right, I could go ahead and include an additional column where I could plan the following year out, right? So 2026, I could pull in my prior year actuals, my September outlook as a starting point as well. So look and feel, as I stress, is totally up to you. But what's really nice is that we make things extremely easy and intuitive from an input standpoint. So for example, let's say we anticipated office expenses to be, $6,000 for the month of January. A user can enter in that value into that cell. Prophix will recalculate the annual total along with the subtotal for the account below as well. The one thing that I want to highlight here before I get too far ahead of myself is that if you want to do a bottoms up build, you can absolutely send out blank templates. What we find is a lot of organizations like to speed up their budget process. It's not uncommon for budgeting to take some organizations in upwards of 4 to 5 months. And what we recommend is actually leveraging the copy and paste functionality within Prophix to precede your budget for the upcoming year. And the nice part is let's say you have a September outlook where you have 9 months of actuals, 3 months worth of budget. It really gives you a good idea of how you're going to be tracking into the new year. So it's a great starting point that saves a lot of organizations quite a bit of time. But once again, totally up to you. Prophix accommodates the flexibility. What's also pretty neat, let's say we want to go ahead and update maybe 6 months worth of office expense. And what's really neat, you could select the 6 months, you could select adjust data, and then you'll notice a prompt that'll appear asking you how you like to do so. Here's where we could adjust by percentages. We could do so by absolute amounts. We could inflate. We could even interpolate between two different data points as well. But in this case, let's say we want to increase it by 2%. All you do is hit enter and Prophix will go ahead and update those values for you accordingly. Now, for those that are not too concerned about profiling at the monthly level, but you're going to have $100,000 worth of office expenses for the upcoming year, what's pretty powerful is that I could enter in that one value in the annual column. And as soon as I hit enter, Prophix is actually smart enough to realize I've entered in a value for the entire year. And it's going to go ahead and ask me how I want to go ahead and push it down to the monthly level here. So first option is very easy, spread evenly, takes the total, allocates it evenly across the 12 periods. The second option, once again, will respect the fact that we have a preceded template and updated it proportionally. Alternatively, this is where Prophix gets extremely powerful. You as a user could actually come in and define your spread method. So maybe you want your expenses to reflect that of a particular revenue account. You could come in and select that as a driver. But in addition to that, as mentioned, the beauty of Prophix is that it's not just financial data, but you might have information that you want to base it off of relating to FTE, headcount, square footage, units produced, utilization rates. All that can now be taken into consideration. You could base it off of your prior actuals, for example. So you could come in, select the version, You could select the time period, right? Let's say we want to go back to 2018 because we're anticipating business to be similar to that time. We could come in, we could select the time, we could select the version, we could select the count. And the beauty of this is that there's no programming. This isn't as if there's cells hidden or a formula that you got to create to go ahead and create these spread methods. All we're doing at the end of the day is actually taking a look at the underpinning data that resides within your models within Prophix. Okay, so it becomes an inherent functionality. So you could create your own, you could select from one of the presets, and once again, Prophix will go ahead and update that template for you. Okay. Another thing to point out here real quick, if we turn our attention to the advertising account, you'll notice little blue triangles in the lower right-hand corners. And what that signifies is that it can't just enter in a value directly into that cell, in which case I'll go ahead and hit OK. Prophix will pull up this separate screen where now you can force your end user to provide additional details. You may want them to provide you with a description, justification. There's even a section for additional commentary as well. So you can make this mandatory for some accounts, optional for others, totally up to you in terms of where you want to turn it on and off. And then as we make our way up to the top, usually labor becomes the most expensive part to any organization that's out there. The nice part about Prophix is that we have the ability to pull in that information from your payroll or your HR system, right? So a lot of our customers leverage ADP, Paylocity, AltiPro, in which case we'll pull in that information into a personnel model within Prophix, right? And then we'll go ahead and create a schedule similar to the one that I have here. So we can include the employee ID, the name of the individual, the hire date, end date, the entity that they roll up to, department, and then we get into all their payroll related attributes as well. All those different attributes drive your calculations as they would relate to earnings, benefits, increases, taxes. If you have any special calculations, all we would do is sit down with you and set those up for you as well. But really the concept here is that you have one area where you can add people, you can remove people, you could update any of their payroll related information. You could have adjustments applicable to every single employee. You could come do it on a named employee basis. Keep in mind, this is all part of the workflow. So let's say I'm responsible for the first pass. If I go ahead and submit it and Ron's my approver, he'd receive an email with a link to this template, in which case he could come and he could approve it, reject it. We could even have back and forth commentary between the two of us as well. And then once he's satisfied, all he does is hit update. And then what Prophix will go ahead and do is actually push this information now at the summary level. So if we close out of this input screen, we could come back out to our OpEx template. And now you're going to notice that the actual values sit in its respective GLs. So really what's nice, the concept of Prophix is we allow you to build out these separate models that apply the respective business logic, and then they could talk to each other and feed the information between the two. Okay.
We just got on ADP for all of our sites, John, and
Okay.
I'm looking forward to building the personal planning module later this year. So
amazing.
That's really looking forward to pull that in. And we have several models that we bring different data in, and I use workflow for weekly tasks, annual tasks. We use it for the rolling forecast. And of course, we use it for the month end and the budget as well. And
Perfect.
that submit and approval piece is very nice.
Perfect. And then the best part, as you would know, Brian, is that there's no linking of tabs, spreadsheets, workbooks. There's no manual process you need to run. If I go ahead and select the parent or operations department here, it's going to roll up those
automatically.
If anybody ever wants to do a top level adjustment, they could come into that consolidated template. Prophix will realize that it's in the parent template, and I'll ask them how they want to push it down. They could create their own spread method. They could select from one of the presets. And once again, Prophix will go ahead. In this case, I select spread evenly, I believe. We should see about $16,000 now allocated down to our 3 different teams here. And this is the last thing that I want to share with you guys on this template is probably Ron's favorite feature is the data history. So Prophix logs each and every change that is made within that specific cell. So logs the name, the user ID, the date and time, the name, the value, and if you spread data, it actually tells you the spread logic that was utilized as well. All right, so it's never one and done. You could always go ahead and create and store as many different versions, model out different assumptions. You might have a scenario A, B, C, right, where you can come in, play around with different assumptions. And
another functionality we use, the workflow and everything you're showing here is the variance reports, John, where we get the forecast, the budget, and the actuals, and we show the common, we show the delta. We have and-on set up for whether it's a dollar, how much the dollar variance is, how much the percent variance is, and then our sites can enter commentary on the material items, and it uses all of the functionality that you just showed to do that as well.
Perfect. The last thing that I want to show here before we switch gears and talk about the consolidation aspect pertains to forecasting. And what's nice about Prophix is essentially that a forecast is just another version where you're combining data that's being fed in from CloudSuite with remaining budget information. So the exact same functionality that we just chatted about in terms of entering, adjusting data, pushing data down from a top level is all available to you. But you can actually come and create and store different versions as well. So taking a look at this, you notice it's blank. I left it blank on purpose. I want to show you how quickly on the fly you could probably go ahead and create and model out different scenarios just by a click of a button. So, Brian, this is probably something you played around with quite a bit. Being able to go ahead and run a different scenario is super easy now within Prophix. You select the original version that you're going to start off with. You select the one that you're going to go ahead and update. You select the accounts that you want to have it applied to. So this would be your chart of accounts. And this could be one account. It could be a group of accounts. It is totally up to you. And then you tell Prophix how you want to go ahead and make the adjustment. So you could increase or decrease by percentages. You could do so by absolute amounts. You could even divide and multiply your data as well. So we can close that.
This functionality in Prophix is very powerful. We use it all the time to move data, make scenarios, take data from one place to another. That functionality, it's called InfoFlex, is used a lot. It's very powerful.
Yeah, so just like that in this example that we're showing you, we've increased, version 2 by 3%. And then we had another version which we ran, which we decreased it by 5%. It's one thing to be able to go ahead and create these on the fly. What's even better yet is, once again, Brian's favorite feature, being able to jump into ad hoc and stack the versions side by side. If you want to throw in budget there, you could easily do so. And just like that now, you could take a look at all of your different scenarios side by side.
And we even take backups of our budget at certain milestones so that we can compare what's been entered, or I'll take a backup of actuals before we make the audit changes, and that's another version. So it's very easy to see what you've changed from a prior version, and there's no reason not to have multiple versions so you can see changes that happen during a month or during a large milestone type project.
Perfect.
Excellent. So our last area today, team, is going to be around really around consolidations. So those that have been running on CloudSuite Industrial, there's a site topology between the site and the entity, and it's how those get mapped to ultimately roll up to the top level parent. It's really around account netting is kind of the premise. That way CloudSuite Industrial does the consolidations, and then reporting would really sit within the Excel piece. If you wanted to use GAAP and both IFRS, you'd probably do that through a multi-book, and that would be the functionality that you'd roll out. So what we're going to do is really show the contrasting opportunity that Prophix brings to the table to help make this, I think, a little more streamlined and a lot more simple, and obviously more dynamic.
Perfect. So here's just an example. I've actually logged in as a different user just to highlight the consolidation functionality. What's nice is that you can actually drive your entire consolidation process leveraging the workflow. Once again, there might be specific tasks that need to be sent out to specific controllers, once again, to get in journal entries, to post certain expenses, to book their reclasses. The very first thing that we would do is actually run the import of the data, right? So you can actually set this up. It can be scheduled, right? So if you go ahead and schedule it, you can specify when you want to run the actual import. You can do it one time. It could be daily, weekly, monthly. You could set the start time. And then once again, the beauty of it, and Brian can talk a little bit about this, is that you have the ability to pull in data from multiple source systems. So you might have 5 different entities. You might have 3 that are on CloudSuite and a couple that are on different source systems. Or alternatively, you might be pulling or extracting data from flat files, right? So you have the ability to go ahead and either connect to directly a table within a source system, or you could import data via flat files as well. And then we always know that usually if you have multiple organizations and if you're going through an acquisition phase, for example, chances are you're not going to be on the same chart of accounts as that organization. The best part about Prophix is that you have the ability to go ahead and create mapping tables, for example, to map that data into a unified chart of accounts. I don't know if I have an example teed up for us today, but really all you're doing is specifying where you would be mapping that information to. So it'd be something like this. So source and target. So if you have, within your source system, so this would be your main chart of accounts, you may want anything that's like a 10,000 series account mapped to 1,000.
We have our actuals broken up by ERP system. And when we consolidate, we actually go to a consolidation model. So we use the mapping from the source chart of accounts to our consolidated chart of accounts in between.
Nice. So that's the import process. Really key thing to point out here is, once again, you can actually run it on demand or you can schedule it, totally up to you. But what will then happen is that Prophix will pull in that data into the respective reports. As you can see, this one's already pre-populated. So behind the scenes, it actually ran all the data for all of our different entities here. Right. So if I go ahead and toggle, I could select, Illinois, for example, and you'd have all the data that has been imported into Prophix as well here. Along with that, you can actually go ahead and do the journals. So if there's any topside adjustments that need to take place, what we find is a lot of organizations that are doing consolidations, they tend to do it outside of their source systems, in which case they'll go ahead and produce journal entries in Excel. The nice part within Prophix is you can actually go ahead and create various types of journal binders. So for example, you may have IFRS adjustments. You might have specific entries related to tax or GAAP purposes. You might have elimination entries, for example, that need to be posted as well. So all of these entries can actually be done directly within Prophix. So the actual overall consolidation process can be handled within the application. Alternatively, if it's being done within the source solution, that's good. You can just leverage Prophix for the reporting aspect. But in addition to that, if you're dealing with, multi-currency within Prophix, you have the ability to go ahead and convert. So some source systems, and Brian, you're probably well aware of this, don't have the ability to go ahead and convert from operating into reporting. Therefore, within Prophix, you can do so as well. Each account is tagged with a specific rate, and then also you have the ability to go ahead and select the method, and each entity is tagged in its respective currency as well.
Luckily, this time around, I've only got one currency, and that's Canadian dollar to US dollar. So I'm very lucky in that aspect. So it's super, super simple in Prophix. And, the consolidation, we use consolidating entities instead of the journal entries. And we run a process to consolidate. And most of our adjustments or reclasses have to do with intercompany eliminations, but the entire process is handled inside Prophix. It does not exist in the ERPs.
And then just with respect to setup of the journal entries, once again, to add a new one, you'd simply hit the little plus icon. You can always go in to edit them. And this is really where you're setting up the do tos and do froms. If you have dedicated accounts that are set up within your ERP system, we can actually source the value from those dedicated trading partners. So you don't have to go ahead and enter in the values directly into this input schedule. You can source them directly. And then once again, there's that financial intelligence to determine whether or not it's reversing or standard. But really nice in the sense that you're bringing all the consolidations into one central location. So once again, here's just an example. If there's any type of support, usually journal entries need some sort of support to back it up, especially for accrual purposes. It might be an invoice purchase order, for example, you can actually go ahead and attach that as well. And lastly, here's another report that I've produced as well. From a consolidation standpoint, what's really, really common for a lot of organizations is to produce a report similar to the one that I have here. You notice what we like to do is actually create what I would say is like a dummy elimination entity. And therefore, you could see what gets eliminated and where.
And
once
it's
again,
super useful.
yeah. And I like the dedicated accounts as well between the trading partners.
Yes.
So we got our US limbs, our Canadian, North American, European, and global as well. All right, we have 4 minutes remaining here. Ron, should we go ahead? And I believe there's one more polling question, and then we have a couple minutes for questions. Here we go. My organization is interested in making an investment in a CPM solution. All right. Q&A. There we go. So we don't have anybody interested in a solution. We got to change the minds of those.
That's right.
Well, I think a lot of our attendees are on call-in line, and so they're not able to participate in the poll.
Oh, got you. Okay.
But we do have some questions.
Perfect. Do you want to go ahead and read those out, Stephanie?
Absolutely. The first one is, how long does a typical implementation take?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when it comes to Prophix, the nice part is that we don't talk in terms of months. Really, the typical Prophix implementation in duration is about 25 days, which we spread over usually over a 4 to 8 week period. We work around the customer schedule. Obviously, if they have the full time to go ahead and dedicate it, we can actually get them running within 20 to 25 days.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I found the longest part of an implementation is getting your IT team to find the time to hook up the data with Prophix. Once the data is hooked up with Prophix, it goes fairly quick.
All right. There's another question. Do we have time for that?
Yeah.
Prophix looks really easy to use. Do end users need to know or be good at Excel?
Oh, that's a really good one as well. And the answer to that is no. We've actually specifically designed Prophix to have that Microsoft look and feel. We realized that if anybody's worked within the finance and accounting team at one point or another, they probably used Excel, right? So rather than having to go ahead and reinvent the wheel or having them learn coding and programming or some sort of scripting language, it was really just a lot easier to give them a tool that they were familiar with. So everything, once again, from an end user standpoint, is all done through point, click, drag, drop, or using very easy to use pick lists and menu screens.
Okay. And we actually just got one more question. It's, besides our ERP system, can Prophix integrate to other source systems?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's the beauty of Prophix. We are system agnostic. So for a lot of organizations, they are typically pulling information from their ERP system, their payroll system for personnel planning. And then on the sales side, it's usually their CRM system, such as Salesforce, for example.